as old as I am, I feel as well as I do because I ate healthy food. And now I rather eat vegetable than any meat in the whole world. I rather eat vegetable any day. So my life was very happy. And my daddy, he always had time to, I would say, teach us about the fun things, because Mama always had to sew and make our clothes. So he would sit there by the fireplace at night, and as large as I was, so often I would sit on my daddy's lap and my feet would be on the floor. But he would go backwards and forward, and he had a big stomach, and the water in his stomach was in clunk up as he would rock me, as large as I was, because I was the baby girl for a long time until Susie was born. So anyway, he would teach us different things. When at night we were studying our lesson maybe in the next room. My dad always was a good math student. He could always tell us what everything wasn't even looking at the book. He could tell us, give us the answer from one room to the other. Then he would teach us the fun things about going to church at night, for fun things like a feast in the wilderness. A feast in the wilderness was a fun thing that they would have a program. They would have guitars to play, people to sing. They would have a cakewalk. They would have a pie strut. And my daddy would get up and show us how they would walk when they would do the pie strut, or they would walk to do the cakewalk. Then they would have, at the feast in the wilderness, they would have a box of food that you could buy this whole box of food for $1. They would have fried chicken, sweet potato pies, pound cake, chocolate cake. They would have fried opossum in those boxes. Those boxes were delicious. My dad would bring them home and he would share it with us. And we would just have lots of fun all the time.
Tell me a little bit about the fields. You said that they were people. You would go out in the fields. And what happens in the fields?
In the fields, we grew cotton. We grew corn. We grew sweet potatoes. We grew sorghum cane. We grew Louisiana cane, the purple stalk cane. We grew popcorn. We grew peas, black-eyed peas, purple hull peas. Then we had something that we call a truck patch, and that was out from the farm fields. That wasn't at the garden. We would just pick a spot that we would just mostly plant okra, because okra would just grow all by itself. So often we would just go there and gather the okra and bring it home to Mama out of the truck patch. That was just a name we call it. Oh, we grew watermelons, huge watermelons. We just had lots of fun. And then we had, when time to gather the cotton and everything, I never were able to work in the field because I had to take care of the babies. But when Papa would go to town sometimes, he says, I want everyone to get a flour sack and pick some cotton before I come back. So we would just run out there and pick this sack of cotton before he'd get home. He would always bring us so often a whole stalk of bananas, a whole box. Fruit came in wooden boxes in those days. He would bring a wooden box of bananas, a wooden box of apples, a wooden box of these pressed raisins, and then a wooden box of apples and oranges and things like that. He would bring that home to us. And Mama would raise so much bell pepper in the garden. He would take it down to the supermarket down on Main Street. And this man, he would just trade it in for just fruit for us to eat. And we would just eat fruit all the afternoon and all night until we got ready to go to bed.
So how was it that, it seemed like during that time period, there were a lot of black people who weren't more affluent. How was it that you guys were that privilege to have the land and stuff. How did you guys get the land, the house, and the all that stuff, the stores? What do you remember?
Well, to my remembrance in the Staunton that my dad's parents had this land in the beginning, and then my dad, that was like 120 acres that he had from his parents. Then my dad bought 3,000 acres of land that we called the P Place. And this is the land that the Dutchman enabled my dad to lose because he wanted my dad to stand a mortgage for him. So my dad stood.
Okay, hold on 1 second. 1 second. Just shut this door. So, yeah, tell us about that Dutchman. You're talking about the Dutchman and how the Dutchman, that whole thing. So you had 120 acres, then you got 3,000 acres. You go from there?
So we got the 3,000 acres, and the Dutchman lived across the Noxubee River. He lived south across the Noxubee River, and we lived north of the Noxubee River. He would come across that Noxubee River every day to visit my dad, like he was my dad's best friend. And he would always say, Bob this, Bob that, you know. And my dad would just take him as a dear friend. He would ride him all over the fields and show him all the pretty cotton and corn was growing on our land. All the time he was envious and jealous of my dad. And then he asked my dad to stand this mortgage for him that he knew he wasn't intending to pay it back.
So when you say stand the mortgage, what does that mean?
I don't know who the Dutchman, I don't know who Ed Doyle owed for this mortgage. He owed someone. Someone seemed to think that he wanted to get the sawmill fixed, but that wasn't that I had ever heard that he wanted to get the sawmill fixed. He owed a mortgage of some other type and had told my dad he could have the mill. That was his collateral. The mill was his collateral for the loan. But the loan was for something I don't know what he wanted to get. But all he wanted to do was to break my father. That was the idea.
So what happened? Your dad signed?
Signed this. He signed it, and that was just like he got it for himself. When you don't pay something, and if I sign for you, I have to pay it, or they will possess my belongings.